So we are going to continue to look at design and human beings by looking at ergonomics and the history of plastics. So let's take a look at human ergonomic design. So what is anthropometrics? The activity or science of designing, building, or equipping mechanical devices or artificial environments to the anthropometric physiological or psychological requirements of the humans that will use them. Anthropometric refers to a branch of anthropology, or the science of studying humans and all of their relations, that deals with making comparative measurements of the human body in spaceflight. For instance, the length of the spinal column is measured before and during flight to see if the vertebrae expands in space. Anthropometric data is useful in designing just about anything, like a chair that has to interface with people. So here we see what some anthropometric designs might look like. And these are human measurements in different positions. So Henry Dreyfuss, born 1904, dies 1972, had a profound impact on the daily lives of millions and millions of Americans. Through industrial design, the process we use to shape environments, transportation products, and packaging, he raised the standards of American industry. A constant focus on the needs of the average consumer characterized his work. Dreyfuss came to prominence in the 1930s from a background in theater design. In the New York Society for Ethical Culture's high school, he learned the rudiments of staging theatrical productions, as well as a dedication to and concern for the welfare of others who were in the production. And eventually, he starts to bring this idea of anthropometric design into the workplace. So with the end of fighting in sight, American manufacturers looked at the development of good products for the home market. Designers anticipated a frenzy of demand for consumers who had gone without during the war years. So since the 1930s, their high-quality audio equipment was used by many professionals and ham operators. The company Helicrafter also worked in Chicago, had a Chicago office, and worked with a well-known designer who we've already talked about, Raymond Loewy, to restyle their line of radios to appeal to the domestic buyer. So when Loewy's team designed it, he looked at the controls of the earlier models and created a cabinet that was more compatible with a home environment. It felt like a piece of furniture. The team went on to develop a push-button television in 1948 and a more fully realized version of their radio designs with a strict organization of knobs, legible graphics, and rigid formal design of cabinet elements, all due to this idea of anthropometrics. So we can see how things are starting to change because we want to know how, people use things and like what's convenient and more functional. So here's a bunch of these different versions. Another designer during this time was Isamu Noguchi. He designed lighting and other furniture as well, but here's a light, economical form of his simple plastic cylinder lamp. It was highly successful for use in smaller living spaces of the post-war housing. So everybody wanted a house, and so this idea of being able to put furniture in these houses was important to think about size. It couldn't take on those huge Victorian chairs and sofas and all of the stuff that had gone on before. This lamp became widely imitated, and it appears in the American scene in 1948. It was the first lamp designed by Noguchi, and it expressed his preoccupation with quality and sensibility of light, which led to 1950s very well-known Akari lamps, which we're going to look at here. So the Akari light sculptures by Isamu Noguchi are considered icons of the 1950s, mid-century modern movement. Noguchi sketched the first of his well-known works, and he used mulberry paper and bamboo in 1951. Handmade for half a century, the original manufacturer in Gifu, Japan, the paper lanterns are harmoniously blend of Japanese handcraft and the modernist form. And as light sculptures developed, the sculptural use of illumination that Noguchi had first proposed in 1933 really became realized. And we start to see this idea of what is known as a musical weather vane. And he brought into fruition this idea of the lunar sculptures and interiors that lasted for decades. As home furnishings continue to extend their domestic application to sculpture, Noguchi had advanced that biomorphic furniture ideas in the 1940s, and we see a lot of things made again with the washi paper or the mulberry paper, and then the bamboo ribbing. This is another design, 1949. It's called the chair. It's probably a chief icon of Wagner's career, and it's a form that he revisits often. He's responsible for a number of other designs. He exhibited a joint project at the Cabinet Maker Show every year from 1941 to 1966. He claimed that it was more like a game and that he had to solve a problem to display every autumn. And there we can see that very curved, round back, using a teak wood, soft, rounded legs, all of these like things that we're starting to see more and more in almost all design during this time. Here's some more of his chair designs. And they were manufactured by P.P. Mobler and Carl Hansen and Sons. And that brings us to Charles Eames and Eero Saarinen. So they also recognized the need of how are they going to make furniture and things that would be comfortable, but at the same time not use a lot of natural materials. Again, like think about the Bauhaus and the whole idea of tubular steel. So recognizing the need, Eames and he said the primary condition for design was to know what people needed. Early in their career together, Charles and Ray Eames, which they were a husband and wife team, identified the need for affordable yet high quality furniture for the average consumer. The furniture would solve a variety of purposes. So for 40 years, the Eameses experimented with ways to meet this challenge, designing flexibility into their compact storage units and collapsible sofas for the home, seating for stadiums, airports, and schools, and chairs for virtually anywhere. And there we can see some of the molded seats that they had attempted, and there you can see some of them also cracking. The chairs were designed for Herman Miller and Form Materials. Molded plywood, fiberglass reinforced plastic, bent and welded wire mesh, and cast aluminum. The conceptual backbone of this diverse work was the search for a seat and a back form that would comfortably support the human body, using three-dimensionally shaped surfaces or flexible materials instead of cushioned upholstery. So that was the goal. The device that they used to mold and the chairs and to stamp the metal chairs into shells was this handmade molding piece that they had created. Expensive metal stamped chair was replaced by a low-cost fiberglass chair eventually and it was reinforced again with PVC or different types of plastic by 1948. So here's the first chair that they designed. The ethos of functionalism informed all of their furniture. What works is better than what looks good, Ray said. The looks good can change, but what works will work forever. And so this chair was 1946, molded plywood developed from chairs that both Charles and then Eero Saarinen, who was his friend at school, they entered into the Museum of Modern Art's organic design competition in 1940, and the competition in which they took place ended up in 1946. This chair won, but they were never able to mass produce it because it was way too expensive. They ended up having to put an upholstery over the top, which was not their goal. So this is the very first one. This is where they end up, though. This is the Lachaise. This was created in 1948 for the International Competition for Low-Cost Furniture Design. The name Lachaise was both a reference to the sculptor Gaston Lachaise and a pun on his name. The chair was produced through Vitra AG up until 1990. The Eames office fabricated two versions of this minimum chair, one with a seat and a back of sheet metal and another using metal mesh. This was 1948. Again, doesn't look very comfortable, but definitely looks like anything you'd see out of IKEA. Another designer during this time was Ernest Race. He introduced this chair in 1951, which signaled the country's return to prosperity after the bleak war years. It's called the Antelope chair, noted for its whimsical style, spidery frame, and then, of course, the ball feet. Don't forget those. The use of the steel rods was an innovation in British furniture, although the molded plastic seat owes much to Charles Eames and Ray Eames' plywood chair that was already in production in the United States. Here's a great little lamp produced by Greta Von Nessen, designed by Greta Von Nessen. It's called the Anywhere lamp. It was produced in 1952. Again, using the use of industrial materials and undisguised construction. Van Nessen Anywhere lamp followed the Bauhaus principles. The lamp was designed for adaptability. It can be suspended, it can be mounted on the wall, or it could be placed on a table. And then we start to see everything going smaller. And here in 1959, we see the world's first fully transistorized television challenge the communication industry to compete in the field of miniaturization. And so people could go watch the ball game. They could just take their TV and have an antenna and be able to watch. Dieter Rams also was involved in this. This is the first pocket phonograph and pocket radio from 1959. And so you could actually put a little record on there, 45, and you could play it. Really crazy. And then, of course, here's some ergonomic cutlery by Carl Pott. Again, getting away with the, all the fancy fleur-de-lis designs and the handles, and everything's very soft and, very, not soft, but softly curved and ergonomic. And that takes us to the end. And there's a couple of very good videos in the content section. One is called How this Chair Conquered the World, and another is about plastic production and and so on, and ergonomic production. So please take a look at those, and I will talk to you again next time.